Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Anchoring the Consciousness of Oneness World Summit. I'm Sarah Daves, your co-host for this event, and today I'm talking with a dear friend of mine, Albert Moore, in Richmond, Virginia. We'll be discussing self-mastery and the pathway to a new Earth experience. Albert facilitates the program Architecture of the Soul, which leads individuals and groups toward mastery and self-awareness. This program is for the bold and adventurous, and those willing to look within themselves to find and express their unique genius. Al is retired from 45 years as an architect and urban designer. He consults with organizations to help design the new Earth's social and physical systems based on unity. He is an accomplished artist and the author of Eyes in the Mirror, Everything Changed When He Met His Soul. Thank you, Albert, for being here and taking the time for this today.
Great pleasure, as always, Sarah.
So let's just get right to it. And we're talking about self-mastery here. So can you explain what that is? What is self-mastery?
I can explain my perspective on it. Someone else might have another one. So it's really about having self-rulership. You'll hear me use the word dominion. And the old definition of dominion is rulership. So self-rulership. So the way I look at the process of self-mastery is that imagine the human being as an electromagnetic vehicle. And self-mastery is the process of learning how to, or training yourself how to, operate that vehicle in a very conscious way with an acute self-awareness of one's own thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So how is that expressed? What does that look like in regards to the program even that you offer?
Okay.
Architecture of the Soul. How do you help weave that in and help people to achieve that awareness or the mastery itself?
It is integral to the communication process with the soul. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine that the body-mind vehicle, body-mind-emotion vehicle, is this vehicle that you can learn how to operate on a very fine-tuned level. Imagine it, let's say, being in my imagination, it would be like a fine-tuned sports car, right? High performance. And the way that might look is, what I do is assist people to take readouts on the results of their thinking, feeling, acting processes. And what I mean by readouts is that you observe not only the results that you get in your life, the minute-by-minute results, but you assume complete personal responsibility for every thought, feeling, and action of this vehicle in a way that if you don't like the results you're getting, you go inside and make changes inside and watch the external change its reflection of you in outward appearances. So it's like looking at the world or everything that happens in your life as a mirror reflection of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, I've been accused of having great discipline. And yes, that may be true. And it does take self-discipline to do this, depending on what level you want to take to it. Now, there's lots of different, everybody is different, so that, you know, you take it to whatever level you choose to. And I can assist you in taking it to whatever level you choose to. Mm-hmm. So you might think about it as there was something I learned along my path many, many years ago about how I was called on by one of my teachers. I was called out by thinking, I used to say that, well, if I have this money or this place or this partner or this, if I have this, I'll be able to do so-and-so, and I'll be able to be the real Al. Okay? And this teacher got me to take a look at myself and basically asked me a question. What if it's not have, do, be, but be, do, have?
Ooh, yeah.
So in that regard, what self-mastery is let's say you want something. You want to create something or create an experience in your life. What I was trained to do and like to mentor others now with regard to is the process of starting out at the being level. Being that experience that you want to have. As you practice being it, you are thinking about it, you are feeling it, you are empowering your thoughts with feelings. And in that regard, the universe has no other recourse, in a sense, but to reflect what you're intending to be and have. So imagine being completely, or as completely as you choose to be, self-aware, so that this creative process, life creative process, is acutely in the forefront of your thinking.
Okay.
So that's a way. Now, there would be one other thing that I would think about, is the way I look at these creations, and I shy away from the term manifesting. I know that's used a lot in the genre that we play in, but I look at them as creations simply because, first of all, I've been involved in the creative process all my life. Almost 70 years. So I'll be 70 in March. So what do I want to say? That process of being the thing allows me to unify with the thing. Whereas if I say I want something, I'm actually pushing it away. The universe then gives me wanting it more. Whereas if I'm being the thing, and feeling the beingness of, let's say, operating a new car, then the universe responds by bringing that experience of the new car into my life.
Wow. Okay.
So what if you were to be able to do that on a conscious level every time you choose an experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is that we're always manifesting or creating, regardless of whether we're conscious of it or not.
As long as we have a pulse, you're creating, you know.
Right.
And you know, it's a matter of whether you're creating unifying experiences or separating experiences. And these days, I am way conscious, acutely aware of wanting more and more unifying experiences.
Yeah. And so you would say that that's showing up for you and unfolding in your
It
external?
is. It is.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of things overlaid on that experience. I know that in this particular lifetime, patience is a real pursuit or study of mine, because I'm not thought of necessarily as patience being my strong suit. So in that regard, what learning patience is doing, or applying patience, and the way I look at patience is not like, oh, it's patience again, you know, is that if I'm going to be the creator, I look at the quality of patience as a divine attribute rather than a burden, which I used to think of patience as a burden, you know. And then I started to feel it as, oh, wait a minute, what if I think about patience as a divine attribute to inculcate, to embody?
Yeah. So you're
That,
just changing the story.
yeah, it flipped the whole, that shift in thinking about patience from a burden to a divine attribute made it something in my psyche, let's say, it's more of a oh, that then it would be nice if it's if it's a divine attribute, you know. So and I will go back and say that part of the process of self-mastery, and it is a continuing process, it's one of those things that you never really perfect. You may do it really well, but I'm not sure that in a human situation you can actually perfect it. So at any rate, that's the way I would go about it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and it's making me think about, like you mentioned patience and like how that is, that's like a theme in your lifetime here.
Oh yeah.
And so I can relate to that. And so I remember like not really, at some, a point in my life, not really understanding that I was in charge of creating whatever I was experiencing in the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
And I prayed for patience.
Yeah.
So in thinking about it as a burden, it started showing up. And so it's like life circumstances that required patience started to show up all the time. And so so that's really interesting when you're talking about changing the story and then having a different experience with what you would like to embody versus knowing that's something that you should be working on and then still considering it a burden and then having it show up as a burden for you to work through until you get there. So you do have the choice, right?
Yes, it's all about choice in every moment, choice of what you're going to do with your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Even if it's a choice to do nothing in the moment, but to meditate and follow your breath, you know, uh, to take the time out for yourself I talk a fair amount in my mentoring groups or individuals. I talk about how to be in the core of your being. Now, just to give people a kind of a tangible view of that core, is that I imagine it being a crystal, a light crystal, let's say, that extends from the heart chakra down to where the rib cage meets. And that's not a forgotten necessarily, but an infrequently discussed chakra referred to as the source chakra or the seed of the soul. So between the heart chakra and the seed of the soul, imagine that there is a crystal of light, and that through thoughts and feelings, you can energize that crystal so that you know without a doubt that you are anchored to the center of your own being. And imagine being in that place, let's say much of the time, so that absolutely nothing that happens outside in the outside world affects you. Okay. Because you're so centered that you are neither mentally or emotionally disturbed by any other action.
Okay, and that's pretty profound. And so that leads me to ask you about the divine masculine. Okay, because so what I've talked about, you and I have actually talked about this a lot. The shadow aspect of the masculine showing up as being disconnected, right? And not really necessarily, I mean, that's just one way. Okay, so there's a lot of different shadow aspects we can talk about. But in this particular way, it's like just disconnecting from everything so you don't have to like deal with it, right? And that's not what you're talking about. So you're not talking about shutting off from the world, right? You're just talking about noticing and finding the awareness within of like what's going on within you, and then taking responsibility for that, and then watching your external world change and knowing that what you're seeing right now is just something that was manifested prior to this moment. It's just showing up. Am I right about that?
Yes, and there's always a little more. Forgive me for the delay. I'm trying to find the right words. Imagine that you are able to observe what goes on in the external world, and you you're able to hold that core of your being. And there's a vibration I call the vibration of order. And I talk about this in my book. That vibration of order has nothing to do with sequence, and it doesn't have anything to do with, a hierarchy imposing rule on you, anything like that. No, in a universal principle manner, the vibration of order has to do with understanding that everything that is happening, you are able to hold as sacred. Sacred in the sense that it's all being created by me, by you and me, by all the people in the world, through the collective consciousness. And there's something that I have learned, I've, in a sense, taught myself, which is that we're all on this journey to remembering union. And again, what I speak about in my book is the idea that what if our souls are really playing a game? And I should digress for a minute. The way I look at soul is that the soul is the original creator of our particular incarnation. And it knows about all of our incarnations because it's created all of them. And that there's no distinction between me, Al, and my soul. No distinction between you, Sarah, and your soul. And for instance, our souls may have planned that at this point in our lives we would meet and become friends and talk about this stuff. So that's a lot about my book, but part of this idea of the vibration of order and being able to hold that, imagine that you could observe anything and everything that went on in your life and in the world and be completely non-judgmental about it. And understand that my consciousness or my self-awareness and your self-awareness are creating the current reality, as well as the collective self-awareness is creating the reality that we're currently experiencing. And that each thing we experience is actually leading us back to remembering our union.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I can imagine that would be a tough thing for some people to have an inner knowingness of, right? So you could probably talk about this in logical terms, but not really know. So can you give an example? And I think that in your book, you're talking about adversarial relationships and what that means.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and
Yeah.
so people can get an understanding?
Well, the way I would do this is I would relate it in story. I'm a big storyteller because I believe in the value of story rather than it has greater value for us almost all the time than does some didactic process where I would get up and tell you what's right and what's wrong. So, so here I was, this was when I was practicing architecture, long time ago now. I had a client that I had worked for. I had designed a house for him, and for he and his wife. And one day he called me and he said, Al, I'd like you to do some other work for me. So I said, sure. And as usual, I said, well, all right, it'll take me this many days to do this. I'll deliver the drawings, the completed drawings on such and such a date, and it'll cost XYZ. All right. He said, okay, well, go ahead and do that. So, honoring his word, I set out, I did it, and I delivered it on the exact day at the exact time that I said I would. And I submitted an invoice in the exact amount of what I had said I was going to charge. Well, the client, the fellow, had a huge reaction. He got very angry at me and said, I'm not paying this, I'm not blah, 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 blah. And I was able to find that vibration of order within me, just, feeling that core of my being and feeling so centered that it didn't matter. I remember thinking, well, you can behave this way, but it's not going to affect me, and I'm not going to engage. I'm only going to engage in honoring you and your behavior as where you are in your life at this point. So therefore, it's your creation, and all those creations are sacred. So I just kind of casually held my space, in a sense, held to my core. And when he realized that I wasn't going to react, he just let go, went over to his desk, wrote me a check for the full amount. We shook hands and I left. So no matter what happens, and an event similar to that happened to me on this past Saturday night. Time and time again, this has happened. And whenever this happens and I'm able to hold that core, hold steady in that core place, and not react and not judge the other person, things just work out. and it's not, it's not doing it manipulatively. It's just, I know to go there and trust that if I'm in my core, my soul or whatever beings of light are around me or whatever are going to do what they do, because from the human perspective, let's say the immature masculine part of me, to get back to your questioning, that part would have been impatient, would have gotten angry, maybe hit the guy, or done something, reacted in a way that further separated us. But by going to the core of my being and just holding the space there for whatever happens and honoring whatever happens, it's like having everyday miracles. Just life works out well for everybody.
Yeah.
And kind of like, what else can you ask for than life flowing like that?
So are you saying that like the mature masculine or the divine masculine, embodying that energy allows for flow?
Very much so. It's basically the way I think about it in that particular instant is, it's like saying, having an internal dialogue, that says, in my current state of self-awareness, I'm not sure how to approach this. So I'm letting go, I'm surrendering in the moment to the higher part of myself that knows a whole lot more than I know. Oh, just it's like that feeling of letting out a deep breath and relaxing and saying, show me how to do this.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, I know how to do this, beat the other guy up, beat him into submission, make him write the check, blah, 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 you know? And it's kind of like when you do that enough, hopefully you'll get tired of doing that and getting the results that you get, like getting arrested or getting, something, some kind of extreme separation experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got tired of living like that. So I studied and fortunately, I'm a very diligent and a good student of life, and was able to create a higher degree of self-awareness and what I call self-mastery, so that so many things in my life are going so much better now as a result.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm thinking about people who may have had some trauma, experienced trauma in their childhood or something like that, and really had no real control over what happened to them, right? And then that story or that experience has impacted their ability to achieve what they want because they can't move past it because this person did this to them, right? So in that aspect of the adversarial relationship, and people who really want to overcome or just feel good about their past in some way,
Yeah.
like I'm even thinking about like something that's pretty awful, right? So if say you were physically abused as a child, and so you have a lot of resentment, but you try to forgive. And so, but you're still holding on to that and saying, well, this has impacted me. So I'm unable to do XYZ now in my life. And I don't know how to move past it. But you're trying to constantly forgive, but that's like it. And that's like kind of like being in the same system that we are in currently, right? And trying to move through pain and get to some other place, while still playing with blame and all that stuff. So can you talk a little bit about how people can overcome that feeling or that block?
Well, thank you for asking that question. There's no simple answer, but in terms of self-mastery, there's it could be quite complicated. So let me start simply by asking questions. And these are questions that I faced because I had not physical abuse, but emotional trauma. And I was one of those people, like you described, that was so routinized by that trauma. As an example, I was told at about 8 years old that I could not do something. Now, two male authority figures in my life, adult male authority figures, told me that I could not do something because of my deformed fingers. I developed an attitude, you might say it's an attitude, of Um, and a lot of men have this, and it's authority issues. You know? Have an authority tell you you can't do something. The way I handled it was, oh yeah, watch me. I'll show you what I can do with my hands. It was kind of, some people call it the bad boy syndrome. I'll prove to you who I am and what I can do. You don't define me. So a lot of it's about self-definition. And let's come back to self-definition. What I realized for myself was that my soul had chosen that experience, had set up that experience in my DNA, my choice of family, my life experiences, to demonstrate that which I am not, separate from those authority figures. Okay? When I ask myself the question, well, what if my soul designed this experience? What can I learn from it? What about this experience is part of my pathway to remembering my union with all things, rather than hanging on to the perception that I'm separate, that I'm less than, that I'm more than another person? So, in your instance, let's say, with someone having an experience of physical abuse of some sort, you could very easily interpret that experience. The ego interprets these experiences all the time. That was bad, that the person is bad, mm-hmm. that I'm a victim and they're the perpetrator. And our society and this current state of collective self-awareness says that that's true, right?
Right.
So we bought into that idea. Well, the question I ask, and I'm not professing that there is one answer. I believe very much in the Socratic method of asking questions that perhaps could lead you to that big aha moment where, oh my God, I never thought about it that way. So what if we, through our souls, is playing a game, the game of separateness. But the point of the game is to remember union, is in the contrast between this illusion of our separateness, this game. What if those experiences are actually leading us to remember our union, not only our personal union with our souls and Creator and the universe, but yours and mine and the whole collective of human existence.
Yeah.
How does that change your perspective? And then, so that's kind of on the cosmic level. Now, let's bring it back home. Let's bring it back down to earth. Imagine that each of those experiences, the memory of each of those experiences, and the judgment of each of those experiences. Remember that thoughts and judgments are all the same. Judgment is a thought of some sort. It's like a thought structure, right? But there's a principle that says energy follows thought and thought follows energy. Okay? So if that experience is held in the body and in the psyche as an energetic quality, it is held in every cell in our bodies as a memory. One of the things that I do in the mentoring program, and I do when I do speaking engagements, is talk about processes to rid the body of those memories. It is exceedingly difficult to eliminate those, the charge, the electromagnetic charge on those experiences through talk therapy. Yes, thinking about it is good, talk is good, and yet when each of those experiences is lodged in the body like a burr under your foot or something, that you just can't get it out.
Yeah.
The process that I use to eliminate that or to reduce its effect on me of the situation with the two male authority figures, to eliminate that from my being, was through drumming and dance and movement, free-form movement. And I think I've talked to you about Gabriel Roth and the drumming that she's worked with the 5 rhythms and all. And one of the things I really advocate is for the listening and to deep drumming music to ground us, to ground that electromagnetic vehicle, and to ground that soul, that core in the earth. And the way you might think about it is that then each of those traumatic experiences as forms of energy will be removed from our cells through that process. At least that's what I found for myself, and I would advocate that someone try and to see if that works. And it's been very successul.
Wow. Okay. So
does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
yeah, it does. And it's like this is kind of the theme that we keep coming back to in every interview, is that our bodies are holding on to not only our own trauma, but our collective trauma, and and then also
our karmic trauma.
Yes, that's right. And so, one of the things, so there's 2 parts. So the first part is releasing all of the trauma from the body. I don't know which one comes first, but then there's the other. And the other is the recognition that you are responsible for everything that's happened to you. Okay. But when you're thinking about as a child, how can I be responsible for that? Well, then you just answered that question. What if your soul designed this experience so you could go through this thing and develop this personality trait so you could fulfill your purpose in the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in thinking about the adversarial relationship and how we're all connected, instead of staying aligned with the current idea that we have that somebody has to pay a price, or it's someone's fault. It's got to be somebody's fault.
Right. Somebody has to pay.
Yeah. Right. Somebody's going to pay. So what if it's no one's fault? What if we all came together and and decided that we were going to do this. And you talk about that in your book.
Yeah. And not only that, but then if that's the case, if it's really something the soul has designed for a learning experience through us, then not only is there nobody's at fault, but what if there's nothing wrong?
Right.
What if there's nothing wrong with this? What if it's such a big picture that all that matters is that we recognize that there's nothing wrong, that our wholeness already exists, and it's more a matter of letting go than doing anything. And in letting go, we are being who we really are.
Right.
A soul incarnate.
Yeah. And so that's where it's at, Al, for real. It's like you can create a story, right, about what happened to you and why things are the way they are and whose fault it is and all that stuff. But that's a layer that you're adding on to your whole experience, right? It kind of covers up your authenticness, your soulness.
Yeah. So here's the kind of laughable part about it. What if this thing about a soul designing our incarnations and having these experiences of separation, what if that's a story too? You know, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? For me, at this point in my, I'm going to say, accelerating self-awareness, it's as good a story as I can tell. And I will say that for me, it's given me a lot of relief from the anxieties and the tensions and the trauma, the emotional trauma that I experienced. So in that regard, what it's done is it's by getting rid of those events in the memory of every cell, I feel really clean and clear. And as I've done that, I've created empty space in my cells for a whole new life to unfold with new stories, new perspectives, new thoughts about all of those situations. And now, instead of seeing them as traumas, I see them as blessings.
Yeah, I love that. And so if everybody is, I'm going to say everybody, if people begin to start going within to take responsibility for their life circumstance, even things they didn't choose, I mean, I can say this about myself. I didn't choose to suffer the way that I have in the last 3 years with multiple deaths, including of my son. And I could really develop a story around that. And that would be a very good excuse. And nobody would blame me if I decided to just kind of hole up and let that be my story. So, but in doing the work and then having the understanding, like, what if we're all here helping each other to evolve in some way, right?
Yeah.
We're all even like, I mean, my relationship with my son was not adversarial, but even the adversarial relationships, like, what if that soul loves you so much that it decided to come here and give you that experience that you didn't like very much here in this 3D reality? But without that experience, you wouldn't have gotten the gift. The personality that you have wouldn't have fully developed, and like, maybe it set you on a different path that you never would have gone down had you not had that experience, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's a wonderful question to ask. I dealt with that myself. When I realized what a gift my deformed hands are, it completely changed my perspective. But I went through a kind of a mental inventory of all of the things that I have done and accomplished as a result of not only having deformed fingers, but having people tell me that I couldn't do this or that because of my fingers. You know, that attitude of, well, I'll show you, has worked in a way. And I know that there's a very complacent side of me who might have sulked and slunk away to some corner and thought of myself as a poor victim. That was a choice. But fortunately for me, ego had developed enough to where I just said, well, watch me. I'll do whatever I want to do, whatever I set my mind to. And as a result, I played 3 sports. I was a stonemason at one time in my life, feeling the rocks and doing masonry work. And yes, it was difficult to hold some things. So there was a degree of tenacity that I tapped into. Like, for instance, I recall when I was, one of the things that I did at 8 years old, after that experience with the 2 male authority figures telling me I couldn't do something, I set out to do everything I possibly could with my hands to show everybody that I could. So one of the things I did as a young boy was to make models, plastic models. And I found that I couldn't hold the models, the little pieces to put the glue in it. So the tenacious side of me kicked in, and I went in and raided my mother's sewing basket. And I got a pair of tweezers, and I stuck them between my thumb and my first finger in there like that and taped them. And then I had a little prosthetic device that I could hold the little pieces with. And that reinforced my self-confidence. Now, that was a rich experience, but it might not have happened if those 2 male authority figures didn't tell me I couldn't do it.
Right, exactly.
And people find it to be an inspiring story.
Yeah.
So that has great value.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you're still inspiring others. Yeah. So if we're all here doing this together, and but we're not exactly aware of it, right? Because everything does look very separate here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does it look like, if everybody were aware that we're all here helping life to know itself, we're all connected. That's the vision of New Earth that you're speaking of.
Yes. So that might be like going into a dark room and somebody flips the light switch and says, oh my God, there's all this stuff here. There's all this beauty and all of this magnificence. And oh, what a wonderful person my dad was. Or, um, so yeah, it's kind of like the way I envision it is that kind of experience. Then we might say, and that's precipitated by the individual and collective remembering of our unity. Not only human to human, but human to rock, to animal, to tree, to it all, to the whole earth. And when that sense of connectedness occurs, the big question is, oh, look at all this stuff we created from our separateness. We're doing that right now. We're creating all kinds of great things from our separateness. But what happens to the world? What does the world look like? What do our cities look like? What do our gardens look like? What do our relationships look like? What does school look like? What does law look like? What does politics look like? What do all of these social systems and physical systems look like when they are redesigned from the perspective of our unity with all things? That's a question for me worth pursuing, worth investigating.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I came to that. That question via an experience that I had, and it is so ingrained in me that I will never forget this experience. The date of it was November 11th of 1991. And I was undergoing some traumatic experiences in my life at that point. And I was questioning my life, I was blessed with a great business, a wonderful marriage, 2 wonderful children, lots of material things, and lots of family and support and all that. And then I started to question its value, the value of all these things. What does it really mean? And in the process of that, I was sleeping, trying to sleep one night with those questions rolling around in my head. And as soon as I partially dozed off, my body started to do the wave. I was lying down in bed and my body is doing the wave, like you see at sporting events with the wave. Involuntarily, I was not doing this consciously. This energy just overtook my body and all my thoughts and feelings. And as the waves started to subside a little bit, I had this complete awareness of my union with all things. It was like I was floating in the universe, connected to the stars, connected to the heavens, connected to all the people and everything. And I thought, uh, that was a big, big wake up call for me.
Mm.
And after that event, I was able to, next day or so, ask myself, wow, what a comparison between that world, that unity, and this life that I'm having that feels so separate from everybody and everything. And I said, I want that life. I want the union life. And so that started my journey.
Wow. So let's think about like the new earth and what that, well, we don't know what that can look like. I mean, you can know, I mean, you're the architect and you're thinking about like how people are interacting and how they can do it differently. And, you know, as an urban designer, so that probably makes a lot of sense in your mind. But can you help other people understand what that could look like and then maybe what they could be doing even today to help realize that new earth?
Okay. So here's a couple of examples. We were talking about the possible illusion of victim and perpetrator earlier. So, what if the practice of law, let's say two people perceive themselves as being hurt by each other? What if the new earth attorney is the person who is kind of like a healer?
Hmm.
He helps those two remember their union. So instead of fighting, instead of blaming and fighting, what if on New Earth, their reunification and their remembering of their union, not only with themselves, but with the rest of the world and the universe? What if that healing process, and I don't like the healing terminology really, but what if that reunification, remembering and reunification, brings the people back into balance within themselves personally, with the other person or persons, and with the rest of their community and their world?
Yeah, because when you said it before, like the answers are already there. It's just the answers are creating the vibration or the situation for the question to arise.
I
So people
think
can
what
arrive at
you're
the answer.
referring to is called systems thinking.
Okay.
And that says that, and I use this in my mentoring work and I write about it in my book, systems thinking would say the answer gives us the problem so that we'll seek the answer. Okay? And the problem is always the result of some form of separateness, and the answer is always some form of unification.
Wow. Yeah. And that makes a
That
whole
makes all problem solving very simple.
right. Yeah, I'm thinking about conflict resolution and using a unit of circle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a conflict arises, and so that's kind of my message, right? So the conflict arises, and um, the reason it's here is because there's a wound that's ready to be healed, and so
Yeah, that could be the case.
it could be. That's only one example, but so the problem or the conflict, or whatever you want to call it, is the bridge to oneness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
I really like how every conversation that we have, we're talking about kind of the same thing on different terms, but it's all interrelated, and it's so. I love talking to you. You just expand my mind so much, and I appreciate you. Um,
Well, it's like, it's the way I would describe it is like living in what I call a holographic universe. If everything is connected to everything else, then it doesn't matter where you start.
right, because the time being linear, that's our 3D reality. That's
Right.
not,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you start, and it doesn't matter where you finish. It's just, it really for me boils down to remembering my union with all things,
Yeah.
with individuals, with fish, with the ocean, with the stars and the sky, and it that memory, as that memory expands for me, I feel unfazed by any of the human drama.
Right. Yeah. And it's not the not caring piece where, like people have talked about a new age prison, instead of like the new age movement. It's like the new age or the new cage movement. Okay. So where you're not necessarily, like separate, not, well, you're actually separating yourself from what's going on. So you don't have to feel that kind of thing. And that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about something very different. You're talking
And
about,
that would be kind of like denial.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that a lot of times, like, in Eastern philosophy, when the West tries to translate it, that's where we end up going, you know?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't care about that. You're irrelevant. So what does it mean? If you don't mind, I'd like to throw out another wild possibility about a new earth that I see as just a question. I'll put it in a question as I try to do. What if the human relationship with the nature kingdom and all of its elements, plants, animals, minerals, water, all of those things. What if the human relationship with the nature kingdom is so interconnected that we can enlist the nature kingdom to grow our buildings? That in fact, the nature kingdom actually builds our buildings and our cities.
I love that. It's like, it's not something that, that when you think of a new earth, it's like, how to think about that? Like, what does that even mean? But if we are all connected, and we're connected to every single
Yeah,
living thing that has a cell here in this, on this planet, and then beyond, then
yeah.
why not? Right? Wow. I love it.
I'll give you one quote from my friend Jerry. Uh, we've had conversations like this before, and Jerry is often bewildered by my thinking and says, "Al, you have entirely too much time on your hands. Who comes up with this stuff?" I said, "I don't know, Jerry. That's just who I am. I think about these things." And, there's that John Lennon thing about being a dreamer, and I'm not the only one.
No, you certainly are not.
At least in this life, I'm really enjoying being a dreamer now.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. and same here. And I'm just so happy to have met you and to know you. And I'm so glad that we crossed paths. I appreciate you so much, Albert. And so thank you so much for being here with us and doing this summit.
It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah. Well, so for everyone watching, to learn more about Albert and the work that he's doing, you can go to his blog. That's bluespacecreations.com. And then his book, Eyes in the Mirror, Everything Changed When He Met His Soul. That's available on Amazon. And then also I'm going to post that link to his book and the information to his book in the Facebook group as a post. So I'll be doing that. And Albert, is there anything else you want to say before we end this?
Do you want to post my email address?
Yes, absolutely. I
Okay.
can do that. Oh, and then your new YouTube channel, Blue Space Creations QT2.
That's correct. Yes.
All right, we'll post that.
I'll be posting a new one in a few days.
Awesome. Okay, well that's some perfect timing. So wonderful. Well, again, thank you, Albert. I love you so much. And
I love you too, Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.